So for chapel this week, I just want to talk to you about something really simple. And you're probably totally done with video. We've been on video since last March. You've been working on your computers and watching your teachers through all of this Google and online stuff. And I bet you're just ready to go back to school, to hang out with your friends, to have fun with people. And so I know you're not excited about having chapel again, maybe by video, but it's good for us to remember that at times in the Bible even, people couldn't always be with each other. And so the reason we have some of the New Testament we have is because the Apostle Paul or Peter couldn't be with people, and so they sent them letters. And just think how much better is it to have a video than just a letter. So we have this letter we're going to look at this morning in 1 Peter, and Peter's writing to a whole bunch of people that have gone through some really, really hard times. They're scattered, and they haven't been able to meet with their shepherd, Peter, and so they want to meet, and they want to interact, and they want to fellowship, and Peter sends in this letter because he can't be with them. And here's what 1 Peter 5 says in verse 6 and 7. It says, "Humble yourself therefore under the mighty hand of God, so that at the proper time he may exalt you, casting all your anxieties on him because he cares for you." So I just want to share with you two little thoughts from this passage about how we walk in times that are frustrating. So it doesn't matter if it's the type of frustration that comes from being in a home with parents who tell you what to do when you don't like it, or maybe having a teacher that you don't always get along with, and maybe you feel like the work is too hard, or learning online is really hard for you. There's pressure that pushes on us. And this passage tells us how to deal with pressure. It tells us how to deal with anxiety and concern. It says, humble yourself under God's mighty hand so that he can exalt you. Okay, so just the first principle here is humility trusts God for escape and rescue and to be lifted up. So if you want people to like you, if you want to have a fun time, if you want to enjoy life, if you want to get rescued from mom and dad or teachers who you feel are unfair, here's how you do it. You wait for God. And here's how you wait for God. It says, humble yourselves under God's mighty hand. In other words, God is using the things of life, parents and situations, even things like COVID and our government, to put pressure on all of us. And it's almost like God's hand is pressing us through these people, through these circumstances, through these hard times. Maybe you're the kid in the class who's not grown yet, and you're the shortest kid in class, and that makes you sad. I was just talking to someone the other day who said they grew almost 1 whole foot in high school, and they were like the shortest kid in junior high, and they shot up, and now they're like 6'3". But in high school they were tiny, or in junior high they were tiny. But circumstances like that put pressure on us. And the question is, are you going to let God be the one that rescues you, or are you going to try to find ways of escape that aren't God's way of escape? So maybe if it's a hard class, a way of escape would be cheating. Maybe going online and finding that quiz and studying a quiz that you shouldn't be studying, so that when the quiz comes in class, you already know all the answers because you cheated. Maybe it's just disobeying your parents in secret. There's ways we have of making life easier for us, and that's not what God asks us to do. He says, humble yourself under God's hand. That means if God's put you in a hard situation, God's done it. It says, so that God can exalt you. If you try to do your own rescue, if you try to get out of pressure in hard situations and sad moments of life by doing wrong, by escaping in ways that God hasn't planned, then you also ruin God's plan of exalting you in his time, because you've done it on your time. Okay, so what does God promise those who humble themselves under his hand? He exalts them. And let me just tell you, it's so much better for God to be the exalter than for you to try to be one. God exalts us. Even in heaven, he exalts us forever. So don't cheat yourself by trying to find ways of making life easier when those ways are sinful. I want you to look at the second part, though. It's not just humble ourselves under God's hand, it's also this. He says, and throw your anxieties or cast your anxieties. Let me read it here. It's verse 7, casting all your anxieties on him because he cares for you. Okay, so life is really hard sometimes. Whether it's situations with school or whether it's home, you know, even as you guys get older and you want to have money so that you can have a car or so that you can pay for college, life can get really, really hard sometimes. And so here's what the Bible does. It prepares you now for hard times coming by saying, cast these cares, these things that make us worried, the things that bother us, the things that hurt our heart. It says, put these things on God. It says, throw them on God. It's almost like we are lifting something really heavy. And we're like, man, this is too heavy for me to lift. And we throw it. And maybe we give it to Mr. Freddie and like, man, he should carry it. Well, how much better the arms of God to carry our heavy load, whatever is heavy for you. And sometimes it's just, you don't know what's heavy. Maybe it's a sister or a brother. And they just are always pushing you and hurting you or making you feel bad. Maybe they're really good in sports and you work really hard but you're not as good, or they tell you you're not as good and they make you feel bad. Maybe it's just the circumstances of life. Maybe you look around at school and you feel like everyone's got it better and it just kind of sits on you and it's heavy. Well, here's what God says. God says that we need to give those to God. And the point is we do that by praying. And so it might be something as simple as saying, God, help me in school. I'm not doing very good. Please give me help. And we give that burden to God and say, God, you got to carry this thing. I'm not good enough on my own. I'm not strong enough. I'm not smart enough to get this done. But God, if you've asked me to be in 8th grade, if you've asked me to be in 6th grade and this math is so hard, God, you can help me. And we take the burdens of our heart, we put the burdens that are pushing us down and making us fall to the ground in life and feel like quitting, and we give them to God. And we do that by prayer. Now I want you to catch this. Most of us know we're not supposed to be proud. So the way we fight against pride are given in this passage, and there's two of them. If you remember, it says, humble yourself under God's hand. And here's how we really pursue humility, is by letting God put us in difficult situations, hard times, friends that hurt us, teachers that don't understand us, parents that require us to do things and tell us to obey when we don't feel like it. All of these things, if we respond with a good attitude and obey God, that's humility. Humility is not saying, oh, I'm bad at soccer. Humility is not saying, I'm no good at English. Humility is saying, God has made it hard for me to be good at these things, but He's called me to work hard in school, so I'm going to work hard. I'm not going to look for ways to cut corners or to skip homework and then lie to my teacher about why I didn't get my homework done. Someone who's humble does whatever God puts in front of them and trusts God to take care of it. Here's how you trust God. Here's how you're humble then, is you pray and you say, God, I need help. And you take and you shift the load, the heaviness, the ability to carry that. And you say, hey, God, I can't. I need you to help me carry it. Now here's that promise at the end, because God cares about you. Did you know that as you pray, the reason you can hope that God will take what's heavy in your heart and He'll carry it is because He in fact loves you and cares for you if you're His child. And just like if you saw someone that you really love and care about struggling and hurting and needing help, you would come alongside of them. Maybe you've seen someone with a sprained ankle and they're hurting and they're limping. You would come along next to them and say, hey, lean on me. And you would help them walk to class or walk to wherever they could sit down so they could rest because their ankle hurt. And here's what God says to you. If you're heavy and you feel like quitting, if you're frustrated with home, the way to get rest, the way to make your path easy is not to cheat, not to sin, not to do the bad things that make it easier in just that moment, but to make it truly better by asking God for help. And God promises to help people because He cares for His children. So here's how we pursue a life that's not filled with pride, but instead filled with humility, is we understand that God puts us in hard situations, and so we trust Him to give us rescue. He will exalt us when it's the right time. And the second way we pursue a life that has God's favor on it by being humble is by giving our cares over to God and saying, God, I don't have enough strength to do this on my own. I need your help. And we ask God to help us. If you do those two things, God promises us grace. In fact, in this passage, He reminds us that God gives grace. In fact, in just a few verses, He says that He is the God of all grace. I just want to encourage you that the God of grace wants to strengthen you when life is hard for you. So do this. When life is hard, remind yourself God put you here and God can rescue you. So wait for His rescue. And number 2, pray for rescue and ask God to help you because He cares. You are not hurting and life is not hard because God's forgotten about you, but because in fact God's plan is to come alongside of you and help you in the middle of what is hard and hurts. Okay, so that's just a simple reminder for your chapel today. I know we kept it short, but I wanted it to be something you can remember. Just 2 things. When life is hard, when life hurts, we trust God and wait for His rescue, and we pray to God because He cares. Okay, so hopefully next time we meet in chapel, it will not be through a video, but it'll be me being able to be there in person, and maybe I'll be able to give away a gift card or some candy bars or something. But I'm looking forward to next time when I can see you guys face to face, hoping that soon. I'll talk to you later. Until then, remember that the way we handle hard times is by trusting God for escape and praying for God to help us in the middle of the hard time because He cares. I'll see you later.